Hello and welcome to Wait, It Gets Better, the improvisational storytelling podcast, where every week a few friends get together with our randomly designed and randomly separately built story elements. We bring them together like a giant rat rod, shove them together, and make something that looks great going down the road. I'm, of course, Levi.
I'm Reed.
And I'm Seth.
And we are here to tell you a story. Should I give the little recap from
That'd be
last
good.
week?
Yes, please.
Okay, last week we were introduced to a world that is a Western-style world. That's the genre, is a Western. Now, what makes it weird is that it's also the entire planet is a city, or was a city. Things seem to have broken down at some point. And things were breaking down and are just now sort of getting back together. So I think what we're seeing here is a post, maybe not apocalyptic, but post some great disaster, but it's all Western themed. Let me know if I've missed anything.
Well, by Wild West, I kind of thought that Seth was, correct me if I'm wrong, but kind of like if you're going to have some order in your life, you had to look to your own security. I mean, it wasn't like the sheriff was going to, the law wasn't going to keep civil order.
Right. Or the law is keeping civil order, but it's in the form of like Texas Ranger style, lawmen who just kind of come into town, do, keep the law, but then leave. Or circuit judges who like come in, and so everyone kind of holds all of their court in like a 2-week period while he's in town, and then they leave because these people are there's not enough of them. Is that more what you were thinking, Seth?
I think it's a little bit of both. So you could have like some areas where they have more the Texas Ranger style, and some areas that have come together, elected a sheriff,
Right.
and they're very like small area, because I think a good amount of the population did die off, and so the population of this giant city planet is mostly barren.
Yep.
But
And then
as
yep.
order is being reestablished, different pockets have kind of reorganized,
Right.
either in
Right.
kind of one way or the other.
Right. And then the third part being the magic system, which is like a life force magic system. Like it comes from inside of you. You use it up as you sort of live. Some people have learned how to focus it. People have learned how to use what's called like soul stones or life stones to sort of store up this energy, and then you can use it to attack or to lift things or to do lots of different types of magical stuff. But the idea is that the more you use, the more of your life you're using up. So if you quote unquote break the dam, some sort of traumatic things happens, and you can outpour all of your life energy in like a second, and it can like do like a nuclear bomb. So we don't know if that's what caused this kind of great disaster. Maybe people were using this energy to power the city, and something happened, and people were all like drained dry in like an instant. That could have been the case for how a bunch of people died. But what we're seeing now is where before the magic system was really sort of, how do I say this? The people who could use it were really heavily controlled and trained. What they're seeing more now is more and more people, because of the sort of global trauma of the uh the just kind of harsh environment. More and more people are coming out with the ability to use this. So the law, or the government as it might be, if there is still some sort of central government somewhere, is trying to find some way to kind of not lose power. So that's the recap. Kind of a good setup, I think, for this episode. You guys feel good about that, I hope?
Yeah.
So what story element did you have, Reed?
I have a wise old man.
How about you, Seth?
I have a wise old woman.
Oh my gosh. I have villain. So who do you want to hear first?
Well, I think I should go first because the recap, we kind of missed the Pantheon, which was my element from last week.
Right. I'm so
But
sorry.
that's a real short.
I'm sorry. I totally forgot about that, Reed.
Yeah. So what I'm gonna just launch into the wise old man.
Okay, let's hear it.
He's Merriweather. That's his name, and he's of the clan of the General. You kind of alluded to it. One of the first times that somebody, this really excellent general. He really was able to keep his finger on a lot of pieces at once, and he
Right.
was a very, it's one thing to be a brilliant strategist, quite another to keep all the logistics and all the other details in control at the
Right.
same time. Well, he was one of these people that could tap into this kind of elemental life force, this vitality, this life energy thing. And he had done that point in facing a catastrophic situation in the war he was conducting. He was able to tap into this thing and focus it, and like you say, kind of break the dam. And he just like went up in smoke, and there was kind of like his life force sort of fanned out in this great explosion and like propagated itself into these what they called soul shards.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this Meriwether is of the clan of the general, and it turns out that people connected to him were able to pick up on and gain some control with the use of these crystals.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, this Meriwether became a student of the old times, when just producing enough food was like a struggle, and at the whim of the weather. This was a planet that had some volatility, and the pantheon was earth, wind, water, light. With
Yeah.
light, the sun providing the energy, and the wind and the water forces were the forces of chaos, and the earth was kind of like the force of order, and and of course wind and water trying to tear down earth. It's just a constant
Right.
kind of that kind of a theme. But Meriwether's been studying some of the old writings and trying to discover everything that prior to the society getting to where they basically harnessed the light. In other words, so you weren't getting fried in the summer and froze in the winter, and you weren't the wind and water wasn't being stirred up by solar activity. The food production became much more normalized. It was all under controlled environment. The water was controlled, so you had the perfect amount of water. You had the perfect amount of light with the greenhouse. Just with the entire surface of the planet basically being acidified. It kind of harnessed these forces of nature, and the old, the ancients would worship these forces that were that they were struggling against. They're like their gods, and that was how the pantheon rose. But it kind of, as society became more technological and mankind kind of conquered the forces of nature, that kind of drifted into myth and stories. And anyway,
Right.
Meriwether's been trying to study these things because he believed that there were actual forces attached to these, especially since the understanding of connecting with the life energy, the vitality of living beings. And so that's his deal. And he studied the old records concerning the interplay between the powers of sun,
Yeah.
in other words, light and energy, and the chaos of wind and water, and the stability of earth, and has procured some souls of some of these soul shards, and learned the power of his own life force. And he's trying to figure out how to tap it without, going, breaking the dam, so to speak.
Right.
So that's that's his focus, and his hope is to restore, some civility and order to the planet. And but he's an old guy now. He's been at this for a while, and so that's Meriwether.
Great. Seth, you want to do yours, or do you want to hear about the villain?
I'll do mine real quick. It's
Okay.
pretty quick. The wise old woman's name is Amelia, and
Bedelia.
Adelia. Yeah, Adelia works.
Well, Amelia Bedelia. That's all I was saying.
Oh, yeah, that's not directly, but when I thought of that, I was like, oh yeah, but anyways, she is part of a a group, not a very big group, but a something that's been passed on from generation to generation, where as the world became well ordered and well constructed, and everybody kind of gave up their old ways for the new easy, go down and, the automated greenhouse just, grows all your food for
Yeah.
you, cooks everything.
Yeah.
Uh, Her mother and her mother's mother, and, on down it goes, kept, let's say, kept the faith or kept the old things alive.
Yeah.
So like and not that it's always illegal. In some places it might be like if you started a fire yourself. So sometimes it's been done in secret, and sometimes, it's just like, oh, okay, kind of older, antiquated, people, whenever they can, they've grown their own stuff. They make from scratch their own meals.
Right.
And so with the kind of the collapse of the whole world system, not that some of it's back online, but a great many places and it's like, especially on the individual level, where there might still be the greenhouses, the vast, let's say, prairie lands that grow, the cattle, but now nothing is taking care of them. And the individual people have had to go back and like take a hold of it themselves
Yeah.
for the most part, which has been something that's been completely lost. Like half of everybody could, reprogram an AI or, you know, fix something robotically, but to actually know like how to butcher their own beef or grow or harvest or thresh wheat and, grind it into
Right.
flour, um, has been pretty much lost. So yeah, so Amelia was basically taught by her previous generations, and has thus taught good many other people as they come to her for this knowledge that has been lost due to the the changing of times and the seemingly unneed for some of these other skills, be it butchering your own animals, growing and harvesting your own food. I mean, simple things, even like like grinding flour or wheat into flour. All this was kind of done automated for them for years now, and so but yeah, no, that's a wise old woman. A lot of people go to her for
How to do stuff.
how to do stuff.
So what was really seeing here is with Mayweather, that's his name,
Meriwether, yeah.
Merriweather, and Amelia. Both of them are kind of experts in the old world.
Yeah.
And Vincent is as well. See,
The villain?
he is the villain. He's as old as they are, since they're old. He's their contemporary. They all grew up together, learning the old paths, the old ways of doing things, learning the wisdom of the world and how it worked and how to, you know, now that all the water's been released from the giant cisterns, weather has started up again. And so the ability to see what a storm cloud looks like is really important now. The weather satellites are no longer functioning, so weather what used to be controlled is now no longer controlled. The problem is that Vincent did not take to this new sort of job with maybe the sort of fervor and um, what would you say, the how would you say this, with the same sort of like belief. He started out believing in the old ways, but he at some point switched to resentment, right?
Okay.
He read enough about forests and knowing he'd never see one, and the hollow decks, the virtual reality worlds were never good enough.
Right.
He read about whitewater rafting,
Yeah.
and that just doesn't exist.
All the rivers had been harnessed and were literally underground and were running turbines and
Yeah. He read about fly fishing.
Ooh.
He read about sunsets. But now, there's so much space junk around the Earth, and there's so many things around the Earth, harvesting the sunlight and the atmospheric energy of space and beaming energy down, that you look up and it's just like a fuzzy haze looking up now. So he has spent the last 30, 40 years of his life and all of the sort of technical prowess that he has from being not duped by the system and incredibly determined to acquire for himself 1,500 high yield nuclear warheads, which he has placed in strategic positions buried a mile or so underground, along fault lines, along certain geographical positions. And the plan is to use this technology to destroy the world. And if anyone survives, there will be no chance for them to retake, for them to turn the machines back on. They'll essentially have to start over all the way from zero again. And he had that all set up probably about 5 or so years ago. But then with the calamity that's happened and with the resulting kind of way that society has been going, he has sort of felt like, okay, well, maybe things are going to be okay, right? Maybe society will reset itself. Maybe there is hope for humanity not to fall into stagnation again. So he's the doctor in the town. No one knows that he has these things set up, but he has a radio tower, and no one also knows. It's an old radio tower, not connected to any grid, and in his rooms he has banks of old computers. And this is the encrypted radio signal that if he pushes the big red button, then it will send a signal to these nukes that are buried or positioned in the right places. And so this is like a lifetime's worth of work.
And California will slide into the Pacific Ocean.
Yeah. Well, no, California has already slid into the Pacific Ocean.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But essentially, the whole, like, enough of everything will be kind of broken down. Like now, if you go through the high-rise buildings, if you go through, you can still find like power packs that are operational.
Right.
You know, you can still get a solar system up and running and get some limited intranet functionality, create a database, find old music. There's still a way to connect. It's not as efficient as it used to be, but there is something. But Vincent doesn't want there to be anything. He's pretty much just kind of hellbent. He has like a group of quote unquote gangsters, right? Your standard outlaws who work for him, but it's not kind of known that they work for him. He's just like the doctor in the town. And he's kind of, once you get to the place that you're ready to blow up the world, hopefully you get some cold feet, as you
Right.
kind of have to realize what you're about to do. That's kind of where he's been at for the last couple of years. It's just kind of like, okay, it's all set up. I could do it right now, but now that I can do it, I don't know that I want to do it.
Right.
So I kind of see this idea of this whole town having both of these wise old man and wise old woman, and then also having Vincent, and so the hero like knows all of them.
Okay.
So that is the villain.
I have this picture of this town, which is basically, they've cobbled together enough to be functional.
Yeah.
And then like on the edge of town, instead of it being, fields and forests, it's just like an expanse of just hulks of empty
Yeah.
building, empty structure, abandoned systems.
Right. I was kind of thinking that the whole town, the town's main square, is like all inside of a main square with like a fountain and everything of a huge old library.
Cool.
And that's one of the values of this town is both Meriwether and Amelia and Vincent, who are like these old people who know a lot.
Curators of the old knowledge.
Right.
Yeah.
And so people are constantly coming to the town to get knowledge, to exchange knowledge, to sell knowledge, to buy knowledge. And, Vincent, before he became kind of his broody self, was uh was I think like each of them have Amelia knows how to survive in the wild
Right.
and thrive in the wild, and um Meriwether knows the ancient what happened,
Yeah.
right? The ancient history. And Vincent's was he knows how to like keep order,
Right.
you know? So his specialty, if you could say it, was like government systems or military systems even.
Yeah.
So before they were kind of like these three unstoppable people that were gonna like bring back society, but then um they found this library and Meriwether got kind of lost
Yeah.
in the sort of vastness of the knowledge, and Amelia kind of got lost in the kind of emerging nature that was happening, you know, and Vincent got lost in like cynicism and ultimate defeat, and then used all of his wise of convincing people and being a good leader to sort of bring about this kind of destruction. But now they've all made themselves back to the town, and that's where the story is starting. So our hero was trained by Amelia, was taught philosophy by Meriwether, and was like taught the cold hard realities of life by Vincent, without any kind of cognizant understanding that Vincent is kind of sweaty hand over the trigger
Yeah.
kind of position. Any ideas, Seth?
Um, one idea I had slightly from last week, and that is, and this is something I had come across years ago, and it'll have to do with like the magic system.
Yeah.
So one of the things, and whether this is becoming like greater knowledge, or whether it's just a few people that have it, or they find this out in the story.
Right.
One of the things that was brought up with I'm pretty sure you're familiar with it, like the Egyptian Ankh, I think it is. It's like the cross, but like the top of it is like a circle.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So one of the things that represents is it had to do, and again, um, uh, whether or not they understood it that way, I would assume something along the lines of like the chakra or like the energy, the kind of idea. And the idea within the channeling energy was, instead of letting it, let's say, rise up say the chakras and release out the top chakra into the universe,
Yeah.
was to onk or arc it back. And it was like it had something to do with like eternal life, or basically it was so that then they would focus the energy at like one or two chakras down, and then like circle it back around and pull it back in.
Interesting.
um so if someone really knows more about what I'm talking about, this is something I read, like, I don't know, like 15, maybe 20 years ago.
Right.
um and I'm just bringing it back to memory. So if you know more about this idea, please tell us at waititgetsbetter@gmail.com.
Waititgetsbettercast@gmail.com.
waititgetsbettercast@gmail.com.
Yes. Yes.
Or add us on Twitter and say, Seth, you're full of baloney. But anyways, I think the idea kind of fits for someone to figure out, or maybe
Right.
something that they know that then, because if it's constantly leaking, or if they use it, if someone can figure out that instead of releasing it out, and they find a way to basically arc it back so they can use it almost like a boomerang, or a
Right.
basically, so that's not arced out, because I know like all the soul stones are out to like catch that energy that's coming out, and then you can use the soul stone. But then even in the using it, people's life is diminished. But then if they can figure out how to then like that arc it back so
Right.
that they can use it, or cultivate it and arc it back into themselves, so it keeps it from basically casting out into the nether.
We could say that they did find out a way to do that. I was just thinking maybe that's one of the reasons why order and chaos were in such disarray, is because the part of the universe's kind of sustaining life is the passage of time, is the kind of giving up of energy. Leaves fall in the spring, in the fall, and then they die and they fertilize the ground for the spring. You know, if a leaf stayed on a tree and never needed to die, it would be really pretty, but eventually things would start getting out of whack.
Right.
You know, so it could be something like you. It could be something like the technology was found to be able to arc this energy back into people, and people were living 5, 10 times their normal lifespan, which would allow for a city, a city the size of a planet to happen in a couple thousand years, especially if people weren't dying nearly as often.
Yeah.
You know, if you were able to have 100 children in your lifetime, think about how much the population of the earth has increased just with the creation of penicillin, where people didn't die as much. You
Right.
know, if you were able to then extend those people's life and extend those people's workable years, not workable like put in work years, but like having children years and building years, and like
Not
your
getting Alzheimer's.
yeah, everything would just increase exponentially, you know. So who knows what they had figured out, and that that imagine in the world we live in now is kind of like it's kind of like a is like a thing people want to figure out, but no one actually knows how to do.
When you were talking about the magic system, I was thinking about the Brent Weeks Lightbringer series.
Right.
And then this discussion, because of the tendency to, you've got all this great power.
Yeah.
The wielders of the magic system in that story, they would burn them. They would say, break
Yeah.
the halo. They would burn themselves out. And like the prism, like the top dog, was only expected to last 7 years. And then, basically burn himself out and
Yeah.
die. And then it was just that kind of a cycle.
Right. I mean, that's kind of what it is now, but people like read books about, emperors or CEOs or great artists who had been alive for thousands of years
Yeah.
because they had this technology. And I was thinking, okay, two different things. One, I was thinking of a person. Maybe this is the hero or the hero's sidekick, but they're called a lightning rod,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So they can basically take, if someone were to blow the dam, right,
Mhm.
and start to just let off insane amounts of power, they can essentially point that all towards themselves, and they kind of ground it, right? It
Yeah.
doesn't, maybe at some point in time they can learn to kind of increase their own power somehow. And then the second one was the lightning rod. I don't remember what the second thing I was going to say was, but it was two different types of people. But that was just the thing I was thinking of. There's with this new kind of resurgence of this power, people are coming out of the woodwork with these weird augments on it. Even things that weren't written in the books, things that Meriwether and Vincent and Amelia have never heard of, because that's kind of how human that's how that's how the human system works, is that we operate the same until something else is needed, and then we can make these awesome jumps of intellect or jumps of genius to like change really dynamically.
Yeah. When you were talking about the lightning rod and the different ways of like channeling or focusing the energy, I was thinking of like a solenoid or like a capacitor that
Right.
builds up
Yep.
a charge and builds up a charge and builds up a charge until it just thump. You can
Right.
it transfer into a big burst of immediate kinetic energy. Like to trip a huge solenoid in a giant electric motor or something.
Right. Right. Or to if someone is trying to, they take their soul stone out and try and have been saving all day and try to burn down your house,
Yeah.
they can literally just put their hand out, and anything that's from this power, if they were to throw a Molotov cocktail on the house, they'd have to run away from the house. But since this is like the fire is being carried along by this energy, since this person's a lightning rod, they can just hold their hand out and just take everything that's being put out and then just like put it into the ground.
Yeah.
And so maybe cool things happen, like they do this and something really crazy happens and like grass springs up around them, you know, as they are putting energy back into the earth. And I think that that's one of the themes, not not to be super hippie at all about this, but like it'd be kind of interesting if at some point in the story they realized that like ashes to ashes and dust to dust, you know, naked I came from my mother's womb and naked I will return. Is that all of this power has been removed from the earth. The earth also has this power.
Yeah.
And it doesn't it's been cut off, right?
Right.
There's concrete now covering all the earth. There's no sunlight hitting the earth anymore.
And it also is missing the the dynamic interchange with wind and water, with weather,
Right.
with the
Right.
the cycles.
Right. And that's just a thing I was thinking about. Like it'd be kind of interesting if there was some revelation like the lightning rod was on top of a building because he thought that like he wanted to see if he could actually catch lightning, and he does, and then he says it's strange, like I've been shocked before, you know, wiring up old electronics and stuff, but this lightning that came from the clouds, the natural forming clouds, it's like it was um energy coming from a person.
Ooh.
And so what we're looking at here is natural power, not artificial power that's been kind of filtered and organized and ordered. What we're looking at here is natural power. So then people start to realize that, so they start to like tear up the metal tiles, you know, in their town. Everyone, it's nice to have metal tiles because they're clean and they don't rust.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, but like tear them up, and all of a sudden these like crazy things start happening, and people start experiencing these. You know, the sun, it hits it.
It hits the ground.
Yeah, the ground, and like things start to happen, and that's kind of the introduction of the pantheon. And maybe through this whole thing, Meriwether is kind of like looking and searching and trying to like. He keeps saying things like the elements. It's the elements, but they're alive. And people are like, okay, I don't get it, you know, because this is like so archaic information. And so he like begins to build. Can you imagine a people who didn't have a concept and didn't need a concept of God in order to, or a higher power in order to answer any of their problems? They only needed the government as that was the highest tier. And all of a sudden the government's gone now, you know. It'd be really interesting to see a person in that kind of society rediscover the idea of a power higher than man.
Yeah.
You know, where everything his whole life has been ordered, and then all of a sudden he gets introduced to good old fashioned nature, and all of a sudden things aren't as ordered as he thought they were. You know?
Yeah.
Well, I think this is a good interlude. I mean, this is a good middle ground jump. I think next time we will get the characters, the hero, maybe the hero sidekick who might be the lightning rod, and or he might be someone else. He might be the hero. I don't know. And then sort of set down the layer of what they're actually going to try to accomplish and what's going to happen in the story. Sound good, Seth? Sound good, Reed?
Yeah, I like it.
Yep.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. If you like this episode, second of probably 3 or 4, I would say, can you send me an email at waititgetsbettercast@gmail.com or at me on Twitter at @getsbettercast. Either of those ways, I'll just know that you're listening to it, you like it, or you don't like it. That's fine. If you don't like it, also let me know. If you have any cool ideas with where we should go next, if you have any cool ideas for stories, I would say just wait. It gets better.